I'm going to break down exactly how you could buy crypto anonymously. This is really important, and you're going to want to buckle up and strap in for this, because everything that happened recently with the central banks, and I did a video talking about that yesterday, about the central banks and what's happening, what's going to be changing, and basically banks worldwide attacking crypto, not just with taxes, but also chain of custody banks being able to take control of your crypto, also the new regulations for the exchanges, also the new regulations for crypto. Now, I've broken this down a lot, but today we're going to break down what you need to do if you want to keep your crypto safe, secure, and invisible. Step-by-step tutorial, so you're going to want to buckle up. And the other thing you're going to want to do is understand that a lot has changed in the crypto market. Now, there's a lot of value, there's a lot of good things going on. Obviously, we're getting ready to bust out in a boom market. We thought about hardware wallets, and hardware wallets are great. It is one option, but what you don't seem to understand is the federal government can track all the way to your hardware wallet. So they can say, okay, they went from this bank account to this exchange, they did this, and this, and then it disappeared in the hardware wallet. And even the hardware wallet's going to have an off-ramp. And then you could say, well, my wallet fell in the ocean. And they're going to say, I don't care. You're paying taxes anyway. Like, they don't care. They just simply don't care. And you're going to have to prove it, and you're not going to be able to prove it. And this is the problem a lot of people don't seem to understand, is they think they're going to trick the government with this stuff, and they've already got regulations in place with this. So it's just simply, it'd kind of be like if I owed $1 million in taxes and I went to the government and said, I lost it at the casinos. I got a bunch of losses. Or if I bought a bunch of stuff that I tried to write off, and they're like, oh, you just lost it. So this is not really going to work the way you think. And so becoming invisible is vital. So today in Operation Crypto Privacy. All right, guys, if you haven't already, make sure you check out the first link. You need to fully understand when you're doing this that you need to be invisible. So do not start something that's Johnson Investment Co. Do not start an LLC that's, Jordan's Financial Crypto Investments. You need to start it as a name. So how does this work? The first things first, you need an LLC. Everything you do as far as assets should be operated in an LLC. I think the one exception would be physical gold and silver, because you personally own and you hold that physical gold and silver. Other than that, every asset you have should be in an LLC. So all of your crypto, for example, should be in their own LLC. Now, you need an alias to do this. Now, if you guys don't know how to set all this up, there's about 5 ways that we make businesses, assets, and people a ghost, a literal ghost, on privacyxproject.com. And if you want us to just do all this for you, you can go check it out and we can actually take care of it. That way you don't have to go through all these steps. But for those of you who are more DIY and you want to go through these steps, that's why I'm going to give you everything right here, so you can literally do it. First thing is the LLC. Where do you set up an LLC? I use a company called Wyoming Registered Agents. I've used them forever. However, we're going to want to set up a foreign trust. So you're going to need to also have a holding company and a trust. So I'm going to break that down in a second. But if you're domestic here in the United States, Wyoming is the best place. It's really the only place to set up an LLC. You get full anonymity. Of course, the government still can figure out who you are, but we're not worried about that yet. Okay, so hold with me for a second. Wyoming Registered Agents is where you want to go. Set up your LLC. What is the LLC? It needs to be the name of your alias. So my alias, let's say my alias was Wyatt Earp. I would have Wyatt Earp LLC. Then I can operate as Wyatt Earp. Now, obviously, I'm using the famous cowboy as an example, but it could be anything. You need to come up with your own alias, your own name. And you should be using an alias on the internet anyway. Your alias should not be Cat Moon Girl 632. And that's not a real thing. It needs to be an actual name, okay? And so let's say we used Wyatt Earp for the example of this. And then I would set up Wyatt Earp LLC in Wyoming. That might actually be taken because Wyatt Earp's pretty famous, but I'm doing an example. You guys get that. So then what I would do is I would have this is what's called my operation company, and it is the forward-facing company on my exchanges. So at this point, it doesn't matter if you use an offshore exchange in Bahamas, or if I use crypto.com, or if I use Gemini, or if I use, Coinbase or whatever it is. It doesn't matter, because the new tracking that the central banks and the world governments are putting in place, offshore exchanges don't really have the pull, because what they've done is they've said, hey, your customer laws, you're not allowed to work with American citizens, Canadian citizens, Australian citizens, or anybody in Europe if you don't have these rules in place. So there really is no anonymous exchanges anymore. So we've got our LLC, which is forward facing. The next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to have a holding company, okay? Now, the great thing about holding companies is A, they can't be sued because they don't actually do any business. And if you've ever seen the Panama Papers and how some of these people structure, but they structured a little bit weak, to be honest. It was actually shocking when I saw the Panama Papers, how anti-creative some of these billionaires are. They actually don't do that great of a job. If you're an attorney or an accountant, which I know a lot of them watch my channel, then you'll understand what I'm talking about when it comes to creating these structures, because you probably already do that. And I know that, the people that I work with at Privacy X in our team, where we help create these things and we help structure all this stuff for our clients, it's kind of interesting how it's structured. So you've got the LLC, which is the forward-facing company. So it would be Wyatt Earp LLC owns the crypto, but it passes through to the holding company. The holding company kind of runs the funds and runs the money. But where we're going to put the stuff is we're going to put it in a basket, which the basket is going to be a trust, and the trust is going to be offshore. Now, there's several different countries you can utilize offshore, and you're going to have to research your laws based on your domicile. Your domicile is going to be the country you live in. Now, keep in mind, if you're a United States citizen, we technically have 50 domiciles, actually more than that, because we have a few territories, Puerto Rico, etc. But your core domicile is the United States, so you have to look at United States law. Now, again, we do all this for our clients. I can't tell you what the best country is offshore because I don't know where you're located. Are you located in Australia? Are you located in Japan or England? It's going to vary. It's going to vary a lot, and this is why it's very important that you understand this, you get involved in this. But the top, I'll give you a place to start. Look at, obviously, countries like Switzerland. Look at countries like the Bahamas. Look at countries like Belize. Look at countries like Costa Rica. And, some people recently have been playing around with South Africa a little bit. Now, if we're only talking paper games, possible physical locations, I would not recommend it with everything that's going on. So there's a lot of different potential for where you could go. And again, there's a lot of really good countries that you could potentially utilize for your actual trust basket. And then what you're going to have is you're going to have what's called an operating company. So it's basically going to be a paper company that operates your empire, let's call it. And you could structure this whether you have $1,000 in crypto or $1 billion in crypto. It really doesn't matter. And you're going to have your operation where the money flows through. So you're going to have your forward-facing company, which is basically a shell. It is just a name. And what happens is your name shows up on these cards. And what you do, and here's the little trick, and I've been doing this for years. If you want to get your alias on a card, you'll get a second card, and you can get a second card in your name. So, for example, if my LLC was Wyatt Earp LLC, my main business card is going to say Wyatt Earp LLC, but I can also get a secondary card and I can put Wyatt Earp. Then I can legally use that as a card. Now, when they ask you for ID, it says corporate card on it, so you're good to go. And nobody, I do this in Vegas all the time. I'll give them my corporate card, which does not have my name on it, which does not match my ID. But since it's a corporate card, they really don't care. And there's nothing they do about it. And I've done this thousands of times over the years. So you basically get a card in an alias's name. Now, I've done videos on how to get cards in alias's name and how to get anonymous debit and credit cards. Also, how I do offshore banking, which we get in depth with that on Privacy X with our clients. You guys can check that out. If not, you can watch those videos here on YouTube, and we break down how to get anonymous cards. But that's a little hack you can utilize to have a card in your alias's name, but it's your crypto card, and you can utilize that simply and effectively. And then what you're able to do is run everything through your operation company. So you can see here, we've got an LLC, which goes to your holding company. You've got your trust basket, and you've got a branch off for your operating company for expenditures. Now, what it does is it compartmentalizes everything in your company, and really the only company that can get sued is the main LLC, which is your alias, but it has no money in it more than just money that passes through, because an LLC is a pass-through entity, but it is also an asset protection vertical. And then what happens is, since you've compartmentalized everything, your LLC, your alias LLC owns nothing. Your holding company does no business, so it's really hard to sue a holding company because it does no business, and so you're not going to be able to pierce the corporate veil. You're going to have a foreign trust, and you're going to have a branch for an operations company that only pushes money through, but it doesn't actually conduct any business. This is how I've structured my entire life. And so if somebody were to sue me today, you would get laughed out of court. You'd be like, I thought this guy had money. Yeah, but this guy controls everything, right? And so the average millionaire and billionaire controls a little bit of money, but they have millions or billions in trusts and offshore companies and holding companies. That's where you keep all of your assets. You don't ever keep a single thing in your own name or plan to lose it, especially in today's litigious society. I mean, I recently saw, and this is not a joke, guys, I about fell out of my chair. Some person recently sued Pop-Tarts because they said the strawberry Pop-Tart doesn't have enough strawberries in it for millions and millions of dollars. It's kind of like the idiot who burnt their lip on a pickle at McDonald's, or the moron who spilled hot coffee on themselves and then sued. Hey, if you got coffee, don't spill it on yourself. And if you do, you're an idiot, right? So these are the kind of things you can get sued for, and a million other things you could deal with lawsuits. And so you deal with lawsuits, it's about controlling everything, owning nothing. Okay, and that's vital. And anybody with money will tell you the same thing. Everyone's like, I'm going to sue you for everything you got. You can't, because everything I got is going to be like 2 months worth of operating capital. Good luck. Have fun, bro. And it's no different than if you sued Michael Jordan, right? Some insurance payout and a couple of bucks, but everything he is, I guarantee, is worldwide trust. You wouldn't get 5 cents from him. So that's what people don't get. That's a broke person's mentality. So you've got to set up this structure so you have the ability to keep your crypto ghosts. Now, why would you do this? Well, can you figure out who owns the LLC? Well, that LLC is owned by the holding company, and the holding company is owned and managed by the trust. And so what they would do is they would skip that. They would go to the operations company, try to figure out who owns that, but the trust controls the operations company. Again, guys, this is paperwork. Don't get it twisted in your head. You have a mail drop overseas. I've got 3 mail drops overseas in foreign countries, which makes me, I have business locations in foreign countries because they're mail drops. I've got multiple LLCs in Nevada, Wyoming. I've got a corporation that I started in 2016 in Delaware, which I operate, which is kind of one of my main core corporations. And then I've got holding companies worldwide. Okay, and then I've got international trust. So what's going to happen, even if the government tried to come after you? Now, could the government eventually get you? Yeah, but what did you do? They would take some serious resources to break this apart, because they would have to go from your company, okay, it's owned by this holding company. We have to figure out how to get a hold of the foreign nationals. And a lot of these foreign countries I'm talking about, unless you've committed a crime that affects them, they'll tell the department of whatever, whoever's trying to contact them, to pound sand, because they don't have time for this crap. And it's owned by the trust. And then you've got to get a hold of the trustee, which is like a year process. So you can see them coming, because they basically have to send a letter of transparency, and the only person who could do that's the federal government, which gives you a year to move your assets. So, see what I mean? So it really gives you a lot of shield, as opposed to any exchange. All exchanges could pull your crypto overnight, and there's nothing you can do about it. And even hardware wallets, they could track them to hardware wallets. So what I recommend doing is building your structure and then having your trust put them in hardware wallets through your trust, because then it would take a major push by the FBI and the NSA to even figure out who you are. And then even once they did figure out who you are, the only way they're going to put in this much time and effort is if you did like some serious crimes. And then you're screwed. I mean, you're screwed at that point. But for 99.999999999% of you, you're never going to do anything a fraction of that bad. So as opposed to just having it out there willy-nilly in your own name where it can get scooped up at any time. There's been people who's had their crypto, the government has seized control of their crypto for accounting errors, for taxes that they didn't actually owe. Governments are coming after crypto in massive fashion right now because it's the most popular thing, and it's not hidden, it's not anonymous. But if you've got Wyatt Earp LLC, they're not going to know to look for you. So anyway, that's what I recommend you check out. Set up your crypto the right way. If you haven't already, check out the first link down below. Get your business going right now. Cybersecurity has become a topic on the minds of everybody, especially after movies like this, Leave the World Behind, produced by the Obamas, put a whole bunch of subliminal and just straight in your face messages. You can see some of these pictures that people are posting, the 666 clocks, the waves rising, the Civil War, how everything's going to be structured, the microwave weapons and the sound frequency weapons. It was an insane movie with even a more insane ending, showing how asleep the sheep really are. But cybersecurity is very important. Disinformation, misinformation, and ultimately having the people turn on themselves. When Kevin Bacon says that was the old way and the old way was 2 days ago, just kind of shows you how quick the script flips. And oh yeah, it's all scripted, movie and otherwise, when you look at this bigger picture, this bigger plan. So I want to talk about cybersecurity because cybersecurity is a very important topic to basically everyone being able to crush communication. Now, I think the biggest threat we have is EMP, electromagnetic pulse. That's the biggest because that's the power. That's everything. That's blackout. It is actually said that within 9 months of an EMP in the United States, so basically taking us back the way we lived in the late 1800s, it would wipe out about 90% of Americans. Let that sink in. About 300 million people gone. Plus, 300 million plus gone in a mere 9 months. Coincidentally, that's how long it takes to make one person, and in that same amount of time, almost everyone's gone. This was a cyber attack in cybersecurity. So today, in Operation Cybersecurity Threat Models Exposed, I'm gonna break down 10 things you can do right now to start putting some things in place for yourself because they're putting this right in your face, and that's a fundamental problem. Let's get started with the video. So, not to understate the obvious, but our entire world is ran on the internet. And in a major cybersecurity event like this, crypto would be rendered worthless. It's why my quadrant is gold, silver, Bitcoin, and Monero. Because that covers all bases depending upon what actually happens. Could it be an EMP? Maybe. Could it be a cyber attack? Maybe. I would strongly hope the events played out like they did and leave the world behind than they did in a full-fledged EMP. Now, we'll see what happens. I mean, the reality is maybe it'll happen tomorrow, maybe it'll happen in 80 years. No one really knows when it's gonna happen, but everyone knows inevitably something's gonna happen, especially as things ratchet up. We got the war in Ukraine. Then we also got the war in Israel with Gaza. And, on the Gaza Strip, Hamas, and, unfortunately, Palestine's in the middle of it. Then we've got now Venezuela getting ready to annex some land, apparently. So it just keeps ratcheting up. Now, I don't want to say WW3, but we're just growing at a fast rate. And our grid is so vulnerable. Thing number one, you need to have a backup power source. Now, this is kind of outside the cybersecurity stuff that I'm gonna talk about in a second, but actually having a backup power source. I use this one right here, Blue Yeti. This will actually run my devices for a very long time. Now, I travel a lot in my RV. Right now I'm in my warehouse in Vegas on my set, but I'll travel around the whole country and using one of these Blue Yetis. Now, I use solar and this thing charges via solar, but having an option to bring yourself online, because my servers can actually survive in a grid down scenario because of my solar and because of not just my Blue Yeti. I recommend you guys buy a Blue Yeti. I have a gas generator as well. I have one built into my RV and I have a spare that I take as well on a regular basis, one of those Hondas. But the thing is, good luck getting fuel. So having the sun power is gonna be a lot better than, people killing each other at gas stations for some fuel. So understand that none of this really matters if you can't power your devices, at least a little bit in the short term. Now you might be saying, well, in that movie, and I don't want to base everything on this movie because it's just a movie and there's been a lot of them. There's been, so many apocalypse, end of the world, pandemic, plague, blackout. There's so many scenarios. We don't know what's going to happen. But preparing yourself, and probably one of the scariest things for a lot of people is a cybersecurity threat, because it wouldn't shut the world down, but it would shut the world down. It's kind of a weird dynamic. We'd lose communication. Almost nobody would have a job anymore. Almost no one would have an income, hence gold and silver, the part of my quadrant, Bitcoin, Monero. And I talked about this recently in my newsletter. If you haven't already, sign up to the Blacklisted newsletter. It's free. Put it out on a weekly basis so you'll get once a week. And I really go deep into what's happening, especially now that I'm talking to more people in DC and in the European Parliament and European government, Canadian government, Australian government, people, what's actually going on. So check out Blacklisted weekly newsletter, just content and none of the fluff. I would recommend you have a solar option to power your stuff. I would recommend you have your own server. Now, when it comes to devices, what's the best thing you can do for cybersecurity? Not use Microsoft. If you use Microsoft, you're effectively going to have virtually no security. I recommend you go to Linux immediately. Now, you can lock down an Apple pretty well, like a MacBook Pro. Phones are the worst thing that's ever happened to humanity. I do not recommend phones at all except for burner phones at this point. Now, if you have to have a phone, I understand. Billions of phones exist. Billions of people have phones. I personally only use burner phones when I need them. I don't actually carry a smartphone or a phone at all with me. It's not part of my EDC. It's not. My firearm's part of my EDC, my knife's part of my EDC, my wallet's part of my EDC, my keys, a deck of playing cards, but a phone is not part of my EDC. Why? Because it's literally gone too far. And people say, if I use the flagship, what is the best one? Well, I like the Librem 5. I like the Librem makes a few good products. So that would be like the best of the worst, but it's still a phone. Now, obviously, aging burner phones and age SIMs, which I've done detailed videos on exactly how to do this, is very important. But keep that in mind. Phone is not a good option. Having a computer you can lock down. First cybersecurity thing you need to do, get rid of Microsoft. If you can't get rid of Microsoft because of your job, you use Adobe, you use spreadsheets or Microsoft Office or Outlook for some reason, then at bare minimum, put it in a box, a virtual box. Also, understand the potential security threats of the hardware that is in your device. I like Linux because there's a lot more you can do. Also, a lot of Linux devices, System 76, a lot of these devices, you basically can control completely. Now, the best option is always build your own machine. But I know for a lot of you, building your own machine is ridiculous, and that's never gonna happen. So at least do yourself a favor and get a Linux. Now, using VirtualBox, which separates everything, using Cubes, which separates everything, is good. It's a good step. But we gotta look at the hardware itself, okay? And when it comes to the hardware, the biggest threat is the camera. And the CIA in the United States recently confirmed that remote viewing is a thing. Remote viewing, meaning they confirmed that they actually do remote viewing. And people cared less about that than they cared about aliens. And nobody cared about the aliens because people are sick and tired of these cover stories with all of these totalitarian bills and laws and the extreme oversteps that the governments are taking. So people aren't paying attention to these little distractions like they once did because some people are slowly but surely starting to wake up to what's really happening. You may have seen Alex Jones back on Twitter. Good. He can keep pushing the message. Elon is slowly but surely pushing the message. Joe Rogan, who was quite Democrat just a few years ago, moved to Texas and starts slowly but surely seeing like, wait a minute, maybe I was lied to, and he starts looking at these things. Now, these are not perfect people. I don't think Elon Musk, Alex Jones, and Joe Rogan are the future of humanity, but they all have massive voices. Tucker Carlson, massive voices. They're putting stuff out there. Now, I know there'll be people so far out in the weeds, they're like, oh my gosh, they're a government plant. No, they're not. And I can get into exactly why. Elon is in a little bit different of a bucket, but Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, and no, we're not going to go the government plant. I know people who literally grew up. Anyway, it's a different story. No, these are not government plant, grown in lab people. People take these conspiracy theories too far, and this is why you get labeled as a psychopath, and nobody listens to you. We got to look at the facts, the fundamental facts. The facts are these Chinese-made machines are starting to have more and more backdoors. Around 2017, 18, 19, there were some laws put in place that started to close these backdoors. Now there's laws in place that makes utilization of these backdoors highly illegal here in the United States, which is a good thing, right? This is why China pushed TikTok to still garner and gain the same information because most of Chinese backdoors have been closed. Now, does Apple have backdoors in the M1, M2, M3 chips? No, there's been no proven backdoors in those chips. Does that mean I trust Apple? No, because there's a lot of fundamental problems with Apple. This is why separating your ISP from your machine itself to your actual use case, like a VirtualBox using Tor. And so let's make a couple boxes. You have your ISP. What ISP do I recommend? Starlink. I recommend Starlink via a business account because it can be pretty much 100% anonymous and you're going off satellites. Now in that movie, and I hate to keep referencing a movie, What was the first thing they did? They blocked out the satellites. That's why they used the satellite phone. Satellite phone didn't work. Satellite internet wouldn't work in that scenario either. Starlink's a great option. If you don't use Starlink, I recommend cell internet. I don't ever recommend having an internet provider like Comcast or one of these internet providers do a cable in your, that's the worst possible outcome, okay? Those ISPs, worst possible outcome, whether it's a business, whether it's anything. So using Starlink or using cell burner SIMs, which I've done videos on, where you can use a SIM in your MoFi router or a SIM in your Netgear Nighthawk or so many others. They're great options both for nomads like me. Sometimes I'm in Vegas and sometimes I'm on the road. I can take them with me. But compartmentalize that. So we have our ISP because you need to connect to the internet, right? Then you have your machine. Don't use a Microsoft machine. Don't use any PC. It's the worst thing you can do. Now, I'm not going to discuss phones in this video any more than I already have, because if you use a phone, you're submitting to being tracked. The fact is, you can use a burner in the short term, but then you need to burn the phone. Not physically, but you need to go through the process of burning the phone, burning the SIM, and then reinstating. Now, I did a video on IMEI numbers, changing IMEI numbers on a software basis, because on a hardware basis, it's illegal, so don't do that. On a software basis, it's a gray area. But the reality is there's softwares you can use that, but realistically, you're better burning the phone or the phone will be tracked. Also, if you log into anything via your own personal email, social media, any website that has your own personal information, you're burned. So always use your alias online. Never use your real information online for anything you don't have to, which is virtually anything. Now, I talk about ghost businesses, so my clients, once they're ghosted, they don't ever have to use their real information effectively for almost anything again in their entire life. And that's a great option because there are bills in place. Nikki Haley, this psychopath, is trying to put together a bill where everyone has to use their real information on the internet, which is insane, and it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen to me no matter what bill they put in place. And provided you are set up properly as well and you're ghosted, it'll never happen to you. But if you're not, eventually, obviously it will. So putting those things in place now is very important. Understanding your threat model. So if we have a box for your ISP, we have a box for your machine, make sure it's a Linux machine that you can actually audit and you can actually control. Any machine you control is good. Now, some people say, well, can't you build a PC? The problem is when you bring Microsoft in the mix, you basically open the door for the devil. They are the worst company to ever exist. I would be hard pressed to find a company more demonic than Microsoft. So no, Microsoft's the worst possible option. I recommend to clients all the time, if you have to use Microsoft for work, use a work machine. If your work doesn't provide a machine, buy a machine just for your work so you can just do the work on that machine. I have a machine just for like a couple of Apple products I use. Final Cut Pro, a couple other things. My editor uses Final Cut Pro. There you go. There you go. Because you cannot have that threat model. You cannot commingle these things and expect them not to be commingled. And there goes your entire threat model. There goes your identity. There goes everything. And this is a fundamental problem. Now, I use things like MicLock, which are very, very important because our devices are recording us at all times that's connected to the internet. So unless you actively use something like MicLock, everything you say around a machine or around a phone or around any device on Wi-Fi, it could be a smart meter or a smart fridge, all of them are actively listening to everything you say, and all of them are cataloging this information for future use in your name, in your username. And for most of you, use your real name. It's the biggest threat model out there, and for some reason, even now, people are still doing it. This isn't the 90s anymore. This isn't cute little, cuddly little, oh, it'll probably be okay. It's not gonna be okay. And so you need to understand to compartmentalize these things, and you need to take everything offline that doesn't need to be online when it's online. For example, I have a very advanced security system here in my warehouse, in my offices down the hall. During the day when I'm here, they're unplugged from the wall. That's how little and these are security systems that have no monitors that I've put together personally, that I've taken out all the tracking, all the advanced stuff. They're very streamlined. They are hardwired. I don't do anything over Wi-Fi like that. You would have to be insane. They are hardwired. I've done everything right, and still I have such little faith in my own system. I've had them looked at by world-class hackers. I've had them looked at by world-class tech professionals, and I still unplug it from the wall during normal business hours. Now, I'm an American, so you could imagine that my security measure during normal business hours is the Second Amendment. This is not a location you want to breach because it's not going to go good for anybody. We'll be fine, I can assure you. And then under the hours of non-business, one of the last things we do before we leave this facility is we turn on the entire security system. Motion detectors, cameras, recording everything, full surveillance. But not when anybody's in the building. I can remote view all of this through a specialized tool. But that's how little I trust these things, because I know firsthand how bad these things are. The other thing you should do is when nobody's using your internet, the most dangerous time for you to get hacked and brute forced is between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m. Most everyone's sleeping, nobody's online, your internet's idle. Now, you can trip the electricity, turn it on, the firewall loads last, brute force into your router or your internet, and then I own your whole life. That fast, that simple. Or you can brute force the network mainframe because nobody's there to see anything and no one's there to stop it. So yes, you should have a toggle switch and your internet should be toggled off when you're not using it. And I like the idea of unplugging things so there's no mistakes. I have 4 children. Now they're not babies anymore, but still, unplugging, good to go. It's why I like the MoFi and the Netgear Nighthawk, so I know things are off. Because that's the only way. And the Netgear Nighthawk, this guy right here, you can take the battery out like you should be able to do on a phone so you can't track it. I could put it in my Faraday bag. Good to go. I have internet, no matter where I am in the world, in my RV, in a hotel, on a plane, anywhere. Take it with me. Take the battery out, I treat it just like I treat my burner phones, the exact same way. Very important. So you need to understand the compartmentalization of stuff. It's not safe. And most of you leave your internet on 24/7, 365. You leave it on when you're at work and no one's in your house. Do you turn the lights off in your home when you leave? Pretty much everyone does now. Electricity is $1 billion. Get in the habit of unplugging or at bare minimum turning off your router, your Wi-Fi, everything. Turn it off so you're no longer in that threat. A lot of people get in that way. Also, if you have any smart devices, smart appliances, smart anything. Now, I get it. Here's the kicker. Things like a fridge, you can't just turn off your fridge. All the food will go bad. So don't get a smart fridge because that's insane. But everything else you can turn off. Turn it off when you're not there, with the exception of the security cameras. Now, I set a special router specifically for my cameras when I use those. So that's an option. I can compartmentalize those things.